Hey everybody, I'm Eugene Driscoll. Welcome to Navel Gazing, the Valley Indy podcast. So let me just say right off the bat, this podcast is best viewed within the context of a story on valleyindy.org. The story is called Finance Director Opts for Public Meeting. So if you search that right now, you'll get the story behind this podcast, essentially. But that being said, last night, the Derby Board of Aldermen and Alderwomen met, I'm talking June 21st, to discuss an investigative report into the city's finance director, who was placed on administrative leave with pay back in March. This was supposed to be an executive session meeting, which is closed to the public, so the city officials could talk about this report with its attorney, Vin Marino. However, the finance director, who appeared at the meeting, requested that the matter be discussed in public instead of behind closed doors, which is her right under state law. So that made the investigative report undisputedly a public document. So this audio is from last night's meeting, and it's Vin Marino, the corporation counsel, talking in general about how the city wound up at this spot, and then some general summary of the investigative report, which is, by the time this comes out, is on the city website, I believe, but is certainly going to be embedded on valleyindy.org. Now, I cut out the beginning of this meeting where there is some talk about whether the meeting should be in person or there should be a hybrid option. I don't mean any disrespect. I just wanted to concentrate specifically on Marino's comments about this investigative report. And you're also going to not hear the very end of the meeting where there was some scheduling talk, because they're going to, as of June 22nd, they're going to meet 6 p.m. June 24th in City Hall, Aldermanic Chambers, to talk about this some more. Okay, I'm going to shut up now. Here is the audio from the June 21st Derby Board of Aldermen and Alderwomen.
Anybody else from the public would like to speak? Anybody else from the public? Hearing none. Move on to, so it's no longer an executive session. Correct. Section 5, discussion regarding investigative report, personnel matter, finance director. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. All right, and for the board, so this matter was originally scheduled to be held in executive session. Thank you.
Does it have to be, Ben?
No, so pursuant to Connecticut General Statute 1-206A, the city was required to provide our employee with notice of tonight's special meeting, and that we would be conducting this discussion in executive session. The statute allows the employee to require the discussion be held in public session. So while she's not allowed to participate, she's allowed to observe. So that's her right, and she exercised her right to require us to conduct this in public session. So that just means we don't go into executive session. So, which is fine. So we will conduct our meeting in public session in accordance with the statute. So, what I will do is I will go through, for tonight's purposes, and the purpose of tonight is to go through a process and how we got to this point. It's not to go get to an end point, it's to go through a process and to kind of explain what we're doing and why, where we're going, and hopefully have an understanding and an agreement by you of the process. So as I know, a lot of you kind of have had kind of concerns, speculations as to our finance director and our finance director's absence. There's been an investigation as to our finance director. And an independent investigator was hired to investigate certain activity regarding a complaint that originated from a complaint at our boat. And that complaint was brought to the mayor's office, and it was determined by my office that in order to keep this process independent from any concern of any party, whether it be insider or outsider, that a third-party review should be conducted by an auditor, basically an outside investigator. So my firm retained the firm of Mahoney Sable, which is a CPA firm, to investigate the complaint. And that process took some time. So during that time, the finance director was put on paid leave, and the investigator went through a process of looking into a number of issues. And what we are asking this body to do is to undertake a process now, because this body, under an employment agreement with the finance director, is the body that must decide what action should be taken, if any, with respect to her employment. Because under the contract that the city has with the finance director, it's the mayor that makes a recommendation and this body that makes a decision concerning her employment. Now, the investigator ultimately concludes that the city lacks policies and procedures with respect to the management of the finances of the city. And as a result, maybe that excuses the way that the finance director took action. And so maybe that should excuse her violations of the city's charter that were substantiated on 5 different occasions. So the report, the investigator's report, finds on 5 occasions that the finance director violated the city's charter. But because of the lack of policies and procedures, maybe that's okay. And that's ultimately for this body to determine. And I think what we need to do is go through a process that is independently fair. That's why I tried to keep this body free from this process. I know there's been complaints about you haven't heard, you haven't been part of, you haven't been, felt like you've been a participant in what's going on. I've intentionally tried to keep you away from this personnel matter because I knew eventually this was going to be coming before you. And I wanted your minds to be free from what was going on during the investigation, because out of an abundance of fairness to our employee, ultimately, who deserves that fairness, because she has a contract with the city and she will come before you and she deserves to be heard before, and your minds need to give her every opportunity that's free of bias and predetermination when she presents her side of her story. and she's gonna present her side of her story. I believe on Thursday is what we've decided, but I know the mayor told me he was not available on Thursday now. Getting all of you together is like herding cats. It's been horrible for me and the clerk. But, and we'll get to that before the meeting's over. But, so, in putting this process together, what we want to do is we want to establish a process that lays out the facts, because that's all this is. This is a factual process that says the investigator made certain findings. At least on 5 separate occasions, the finance director violated the city's charter. Now, I can say as corporation counsel, none of us get to violate the city's charter. The mayor doesn't, corporation counsel doesn't, you don't. Finance director doesn't. That's our organic law. Her employment contract says in second paragraph, she's bound by our city's charter. She should have known better when she was performing her function. But for some reason, this investigator made a conclusion. And the mayor doesn't believe that he alone should be making a recommendation that says one way or the other as to what action you should take. He feels you should listen to her side of the story. What does she have to say? And you should balance what she says and take into consideration what this investigator says and other factors, like what the vote might say. You know, there were a number of instances of frustration with the vote. You know, and we, as this process lays out, we will get into that. But that's what this personnel matter will get into. And even what this board laid out. This board took certain action. And there was a failure of compliance with this board's action. So, where does that ultimately lead this board to? There's a number of directions. You know, if this board ultimately concludes that our finance director should return to her position, then there needs to be expectations that are, you know, that are achievable and that are met. You know, the policies and procedures that she was hired to put in place need to be put in place. And they need to be put in place within a period of time that is more immediate and definite. So, you know, this is not something that is going to be simple for you, but this is something that is a serious matter for you, probably the most serious matter for this board since I've been your corporation counsel. You need to take it seriously. You need to take it non-politically. And you need to seriously read your papers and not just wing it. Because you're talking about an employee, you're talking about your city. And if at any point you have questions, don't be afraid to ask questions. We're here to get through it together. And we want to get it right for everyone's sake. And again, we can engage our employee if you have questions of her. This is not just listen to her and tell her thank you. We can engage our employee in conversation. So, this can be an interactive matter. So, but it took us a while to get to this point because it took us a while to engage a firm, and then it took that firm a while to conduct this investigation, and it took us a while to get you all together. And I want to thank Agata for her patience because she's it's taken us a while to get here. But now that we're here, let's try, and I want to thank you all for coming out because there's much more of you here than I expected, so thank you. I promised to try to keep this to about 30 minutes tonight because I know some of you have other meetings. But, I did want to just lay out the process tonight and not get into too much great detail. But, from a process standpoint, I'd like to start the process on Thursday by hearing from Agata. And then from there, we'll get together and we'll go through the report and some other data from the vote and then take questions that you might have. We'll try to be deliberative and we'll try to be somewhat judicious. We're not looking to take weeks here. You're paying your employee while she's on leave, so we're trying to be somewhat expeditious as well. So if you can, be sensitive as to time, on this, we'll make this a priority. But does anyone have any questions?
Mr. Mayor, I do, Ben, as well. In your opening statement, Ben, to be honest with you, this is the first time that I've been on the board from the Board of Aldermen. And I'm glad that we were kind of left out of the politics and the process, because a lot of times people have their personal feelings get in the way. So now we hired the company, they did their report, and now we're gonna go through the process. So what Agatha says, what the board decides, we're gonna gather this information now, where we take emotion out of it, our personal feelings, everything gets put aside, because in my opinion, there's things in this charter that I personally don't like either. The way things are done, the process is, but we need to follow it. So, from the information that we gather now and the decision that we make later on down the road, I think is gonna be important and set a precedent here no matter which way it goes. Maybe there's some things that need to be added or changed or vice versa or however it goes, but I'm glad that we didn't know what was going on. We knew the roundabout of what, was going on. She was put on paid administrative leave, and then the process took place. But in my opinion, I think that was the best way to go to get an honest answer or an honest decision out of the board without it getting tainted with politics, feelings, so forth and so on. So for that, I'm glad the process went the way it did.
Anybody else with questions?
Yeah, the only other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to caution you, try to not talk about this outside of the meeting. Don't, in other words, don't taint the process by talking about it amongst yourselves out and about. Again, this is about being fair to Agata and about being fair to the process. So keep the conversations to the meeting, okay? If you have questions, you want to speak to me, you can speak to me at any time. That's a privileged conversation. So you can email me at any time. You can pick up the phone and call me at any time. That's privileged, you can do that. So I'm technically the only one you can speak to outside of the meeting. But if you see each other at Dunkin' Donuts, this is a conversation not to have, okay? I know it feels unnatural, but it's just, it upsets the process, okay? And again, it's not fair to the city's employee, okay? So again, we're trying to be fair to our employee, we're trying to fair the process, okay? And ordinarily, I would say if we were in executive session, don't talk about this, but we're not in executive session, so the public has heard of it. So, but still don't talk about it, okay? So unless anyone has anything else to add, we're gonna keep this process moving as expeditiously as possible. The next thing we'll do is we'll allow Agata to to kind of present her, make a presentation to the board, and we'll take it from there. Okay, Agata?
Since I received this information today.
By the way, is Thursday okay with you, or do you want more time?
No, Thursday is good.
Okay.
And I went through this, many times, and I believe that this is not about this. It's a little bit different story. I have also additional information to distribute, but I need more copies.
No, we're gonna do that on Thursday.
Okay, I'm gonna have more information, so I have to supplement my points with emails and
We'll give you time on Thursday.
charter interpretation and, who is allowed to do what.
Okay.
Because I'm not sure even who I report to, so I need clarification on that. So.
Okay, everybody else? All right, hearing none, so we're at 6 then. That's it.
Move to adjourn.
Charlie, second?
A second.
At 6:28. All in favor?
Aye.
Both? All right, thank you.
So the meeting on Thursday is gonna be at.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, what is-
Thursday, 6 o'clock right here?
We have subcommittees too, so
But
it's
you're
gonna
not,
happen
you're
without.
not. You're not available, right?
So I wanted to speak to the board about this.
Well, the meeting is here, so how do you wanna do this?
Well, we're not talking about, we're talking about schedule, we're not talking about a meeting.
Right.
Right.
So I would like to propose a hybrid meeting, just for